Training. Abeka sat on the edge of a feather bed. Her room had a carved desk, an elaborate sofa, cushioned chairs, and a mirror framed in what she thought might be real gold, all for her personal use. Everyone she encountered treated her respectfully, and a servant delivered tasty meals. Her leopard had turned her into royalty. The room gently rocked from side to side. To think such luxury was available on a ship! Abeka would not have believed it had she not seen it. She appreciated the courteous treatment, but did not feel comfortable in the fancy room. It was too different from home. There were no familiar faces, or even familiar ways. Zarif had not joined her on the voyage. At the dock, he had explained that urgent matters called him elsewhere, and entrusted her in the care of a stranger, a boy named Shane. After everything she had lost, the extra separation had stung. Less than a week earlier, Zarif had convinced her father that Abeka needed to leave Okai, not just for her personal safety, but for the good of the village. Pojalo had promptly agreed. Part of Abeka wished her father had struggled more with the decision. She could not help wondering whether he would have relinquished Soma so swiftly. With the approval of her father, Zarif had smuggled Abeka and Uraza away that same night. Abeka regretted never talking to Chinwe before leaving. Chinwe had thought that Abeka would be the village's new rain dancer. They certainly needed one. In the rush to heed Zarif's advice, she had ignored the needs of her community. What if her absence meant the drought would continue? What if she had shirked her destiny? What if she had missed her chance, finally, to fit in? Despite the comforts aboard the ship, Abeka missed her father and sister. Back home, they had all shared one room. They had routines, meals together, and Abeka was used to falling asleep to the sound of her father snoring. Each night on the ship, Abeka struggled to find sleep. Nothing felt familiar. At first, there had been too many new experiences to get homesick. An exciting coach ride, a busy city, a sea of endless water too salty to drink, and then a ship big enough to hold most of the people in her village. It was only after they set sail that Abeka started to feel restless. She had time to think. She had time to miss prowling the savannah. She had time to wish for familiar faces. At least she had Uraza. Abeka rubbed the leopard's neck and the big cat purred, the vibrations tickling her palm. Uraza was not particularly affectionate, but she never rejected Abeka's stroking. A knock came at her door. It had to be Shane. He was the other pleasant part of the voyage. He had been helping her learn to improve her connection with Uraza. "Come in," Abeka said. Shane opened the door. At 12, he was only 1 year older than she was. He was pale but handsome, with a sturdy build and a relaxed competence that she admired. Like her, he had a spirit animal, a wolverine. "Ready to go to the hold?" he asked. "I thought you'd never come," Abeka said. "I'm not used to being penned up." He stood in the doorway, considering her. "It's hard to leave all you know behind. I had to leave my parents too. My uncle helped train me, and he's not around either." "My mother passed away 4 years ago," Abeka confided. "She was the one who understood me. My father and sister, it was different with them. But I do miss them. I know they care for me, as I care for them." Shane's expression softened. "People here care for you as well, Abeka. We see great potential in you. Those of us with heavy burdens find family where we can. You have your spirit animal. You'll learn to find a lot of solace there. Come." Uraza followed them out the door. As they passed sailors and soldiers, all eyes furtively strayed to the leopard. Uraza walked with the sinuous grace of a natural predator, and nobody wanted to get too close. Even the bravest gave her plenty of space, while others changed their routes to avoid her entirely. After only 4 days at sea, Abeka had learned to ignore the attention. Shane had prepared the hold for use as a training area. Crates, bales, and barrels had been shoved aside to form a long open space. Nobody disturbed them there. "Have you spent time talking to Uraza?" Shane asked. Showing fondness for her? Yes, Abeka said. Any spirit animal has unusual intelligence, he reminded her. Yours will have much more than most. She can't talk, but that doesn't mean she won't understand. The great beasts could speak, Abeka said, passing through a door into the cargo hold. At least they do in the stories. When she was a great beast, Uraza was larger than a horse, Shane reminded her. Does that mean my Uraza is a cub? Abeka asked. The powerful leopard sure didn't look like a baby. Spirit animals always arrive as adults, Shane said. Whether Uraza will grow into everything she once was is hard to guess. We'll have to wait and see. Abeka turned to face Uraza. The leopard gazed at her, violet eyes bright. Can you sense her mood? Shane asked. I don't know, Abeka said, staring hard. Interested, maybe? That seems likely, Shane said. The more you practice, the better you'll perceive her emotions. That's the first step to borrowing her energy in times of need. What about the passive state? Abeka had always been impressed by Chinwa's ability to change her wildebeest into a tattoo on her leg. That is more up to Uraza than to you, Shane said. You must gain her trust. She enters her passive state voluntarily, but she can't emerge until you release her. You keep your Wolverine dormant? Abeka asked. Once, at her pleading, he had bashfully shown her the hint of a mark high on his chest. Most of the time. Reneg is great in a fight, but doesn't play well with others. When Uraza consents, you'll get to pick where the mark will go. Many choose their arms or the back of the hand. It's convenient. Abeka had only seen the Wolverine once, when they were boarding the ship. It was compact, but looked vicious. Shane held up a short wooden stick. We did enough archery yesterday. You're good, but I didn't sense Uraza making you any better. I thought today we should try something more strenuous. We'll pretend this is a knife. All you have to do is stab me. He handed Abeka the stick. Abeka went and knelt before Uraza. The leopard lounged on the floor, body curled, head up, long tail swishing languidly. Abeka took in the spotted perfection of her pelt, the black around her vibrant eyes, and the muscular power of her sleek body. How could such a strong, wild creature be her companion? Uraza gazed at her unblinking. Abeka gently touched one of her paws. We're a team now. Like it or not, we're both far from home, but at least we have each other. I can tell you don't love this ship, neither do I, but it's just taking us someplace where we can be outside again. I really do like you. You're quiet, you're not pushy, and we come from the same place. I want to learn to work together. Uraza purred, and Abeka fluttered inside. Was it her imagination, or had they begun to connect? It was difficult to be sure. Abeka turned to face Shane. Whenever you're ready, he invited. Abeka shuffled forward, the stick held in front of her. Back home, she had used a spear at times and had practiced a lot with a bow. She knew little about fighting with a knife. This didn't seem like an effective way to confront a larger, more experienced opponent. She would never approach somebody like Shane openly. Her only chance would be to strike from behind, attack out of hiding. With surprise on her side, she'd have much better odds of succeeding. But this was just practice. She needed to fight according to Shane's guidelines. Maybe there was something predatory in Uraza that would amplify her efforts. As Abeka closed in, she tried a quick stab. Shane pivoted away, slapping her wrist. 3 more stabs led to 3 more slaps. She felt no assistance from Uraza. This is pointless, Abeka groaned, relaxing her stance. You just need... She lunged and stabbed hard, hoping to catch him off guard. Shane dodged her attack and seized her wrist. For a moment they struggled. Abeka silently asked Uraza for help. Shane pried the stick from her fingers and touched it to her belly. Good try, he said. You almost caught me napping." "I would never attack you like this in real life," Abeka said. "I'd sneak up on you." Shane nodded. "That would be smarter and more suited to how a leopard would hunt. Tell you what, I'll go to the far side of the hold and stand with my back to you. I won't turn unless I hear something suspicious. Deal?" Abeka nodded. This new game would play to her more proven abilities. Shane returned the stick to her and trotted to the far side of the room. Staying low, her pretend knife ready, Abeka crept forward. Step by step, she drew nearer. "Are you moving yet?" Shane asked, facing away from her. "If so, you're good at it. If not, hurry up, we don't have all day." Abeka fought against a smile. She knew that she was a skilled stalker, and it was nice to hear Shane recognize it. Glancing over her shoulder, she found the leopard watching attentively, her posture more alert than earlier. The door near Shane burst open and a figure raced toward him. Robed in black, face covered, the attacker held a curved sword ready. Shane ducked a swipe of the sword and grappled with the intruder. "Run, Abeka!" Shane shouted. "It's an assassin! Fetch the captain!" The assassin was bigger than Shane. They wrestled for control of the sword. Abeka found herself in a low crouch, both unfamiliar and instinctive. A foreign energy blazed into her muscles. Every fibre seemed taut and ready to release. Her senses had never felt so keen. She heard the subtle creak of the timbers as the ship rocked gently to the right. She could smell the attacker, a full-grown man, and could distinguish easily between him and Shane. Her vision was enhanced as well, sharpened. No part of her intended to heed Shane's instruction to run. Her heart swelled with courage, and she sprang. Although several paces from Shane, Abeka closed the distance with a single leap. Hurtling through the air, she lashed out with one leg and kicked the attacker in the arm. He spun to one knee, and his sword flew free, clattering across the plank floor. The man rose to his feet with a vicious uppercut that Abeka evaded almost without thought. He backed off a step or two, one hand up, ready for combat, the other flopping useless at his side. Abeka leaped forward and kicked him in the ribs, her foot crashing through his attempt to block it. The blow landed with enough force to send the assassin flying into the wall. He slumped face down. Her instincts screamed to finish the job, but before Abeka could close in, she felt a firm hand on her shoulder. "No, Abeka, no more. It was pretend. He was acting." She slipped out of her heightened state and glared at Shane. "Pretend?" Uraza gave an angry growl, the first Abeka had heard from the leopard. "I wanted to see how you would perform under pressure," Shane explained. "It worked, Abeka. That was incredible. Many of the marked train their entire lives without ever attacking like that." Trembling with unreleased energy, Abeka struggled to calm herself. The praise did not escape her notice, but it was hard to embrace it when she felt so stunned. "You got a true response through trickery," she said. "What you just did to us was a betrayal." I'm sorry." Shane's smile fell. His earlier excitement gave way to embarrassment. "Really? I was trying to help. It was a training technique. I didn't know you'd see it this way." "Never again," Abeka said, struggling to calm herself. "Or the next time you're in trouble, we will let the attackers have you." "Agreed." Shane ran a hand through his hair. "You're right. It was unfair to you and to Uraza. It won't happen again." Abeka felt some of the tension leave her. She nodded toward the fallen assailant. "Is he all right?" Shane crouched beside him and felt his neck. "He's unconscious. He'll live." He shook his head. "Honestly, I couldn't imagine you would have been able to take out a trained, full-grown opponent. Let me take care of this. You know the way back to your cabin." Abeka turned and found Uraza facing her, having approached silently. Now there was no doubt about the wordless understanding. Abeka held out her arm. With a searing pain and a brief flash, Uraza leaped to become a blaze of black just below her elbow. Chapter 6. Sunset Tower. Roland stood with his head tipped back, using one hand to shield his eyes from the sun as he followed the flight of his falcon. Essex turned in 2 wide circles, soaring higher than the tallest spire of the Green Cloak Fortress. The grass came up to Roland's knees. Inside Sunset Tower, they had training rooms and spacious courtyards, but he preferred spending time outside the walls. Too many people inside the fortress stared at him, some with doubt, others expectantly. Either reaction unsettled him. Besides, it was prettier outside. Wilderness had surrounded Concorba at a distance, but he rarely ever saw it. There were a few parks in town, some weedy lots and the muddy banks of Sippamis River, but the port city was mostly a place of commerce. He had occasionally seen farmland beyond the town boundaries, but nothing like this. Not big hills, not woods, not wild meadows. An imposing collection of bulky structures enclosed by tall walls of heavy stone, Sunset Tower was not the main Amayan stronghold of the Greencloaks. Rather, it served as the westernmost Greencloak outpost in northern Amaya. Any farther west led to untamed land controlled mostly by beasts and the Amayan tribes. Roland whistled. "Essex, to me!" The bird continued to glide on lofty breezes. "Essex, come!" The falcon drifted through another lazy turn. "Get down here! How hard is it to follow simple instructions? The dimmest kid I know can do that much." Bad move. Essex now seemed to be flying farther away from him on purpose. Roland took a calming breath. He had already learned that shouting angry words would keep the bird in the sky all day. "Please, Essex," he called more gently. "Olvan wants us to learn to work as one." The falcon tucked her wings and plunged toward him. He held up a protected hand, the large brown glove a gift from Olvan. After arrowing down with blinding speed, Essex spread her wings at the last moment to slow her descent and alighted on his forearm. "Good girl," Roland said, stroking her feathers. "Want to try the passive state? Want to become a mark on my arm?" Roland needed no comprehension of bird speech to recognize that her piercing cry meant absolutely not. Roland gritted his teeth, but kept petting her. "Come on, Essex. You don't want us to look useless when the others get here. Let's show them what we can do." The falcon cocked her head to stare at him with one amber eye. Her feathers ruffled up, but she made no further sound. "Hey, it doesn't just reflect on me," Roland said. "It makes you look bad too." Behind him, a horn sounded. Another horn answered. The Greencloaks at Sunset Tower liked to announce their comings and goings with horns. "That probably means they're here," Roland said. Essex hopped to his shoulder. Yesterday, Olvan had informed Roland that 2 of the other 3 fallen beasts were on their way to Sunset Tower with their bonded partners. He explained that after they arrived, Roland would learn more about what was needed from him. There was always one reason or another to delay a full explanation. Roland wondered if the other kids had already taken the Greencloak vows. Olvan said that the vows meant a lifetime commitment to defending Erdos and standing united with the other Greencloaks. In return, Roland would receive help developing his relationship with Essex. He would be given duty and purpose, and he would never want for food, shelter, or fellowship. Roland wasn't sure he bought it. The return of the 4 fallen was supposed to be a really big deal, but Olvan refused to say what they were actually meant to do. How long did Olvan expect him to wait? Now that Essex had freed Roland from a life of poverty, he questioned whether he wanted to tie himself down. He had never enjoyed taking orders. People with authority tended to abuse it. With Essex on his shoulder, who knew what options awaited? It was possible that joining the Greencloaks would prove to be his best opportunity, especially if he had become a target of people like Zarif. Then again, Roland hadn't had time to explore all of the alternatives. Instead of turning down Olvan, Roland asked for time to think it over. That had been 3 days ago. As Roland tromped through the tall grass toward the gate of Sunset Tower, a grim Greencloak astride a mighty horse rode into view. A girl walked beside the green cloak on one side and a boy on the other. A panda ambled beside the girl, and a large wolf loped beside the boy. They were all headed for Roland, so he picked up his pace. He knew the panda and wolf must be two of the other fallen, G and Briggan. The green cloak dismounted when he drew near, and Roland sized him up. He was the sort of stranger Roland would have avoided on the streets of Concorba. The boy had blonde hair and wore a green cloak, meaning he had taken the vows. Although he was average height for his age, he seemed young. He had a friendly, open face, the sort of face that hadn't figured out what life was like yet. The girl was striking. She had sparkling eyes and a shy smile that stopped Roland in his tracks. A faint response in her expression told Roland that she appreciated his reaction, and he realized that her shy smile was practiced. Judging by her outfit and her features, she came from Zhong, which made sense given her spirit animal. Roland had never seen a real panda or a wolf. His only exposure to such creatures came from the widow Renata, who used to visit the orphanage and read them picture books about the great beasts. "I'm Tariq," the green cloak said. "I take it you're Roland?" "I was trying to keep a low profile," Roland said. "How could you tell? It was the falcon, wasn't it?" "Mei-Lin, Connor, I would like you to meet Roland," Tariq said. "He was born and raised here in Amaya, just as you two summoned G and Briggan. He called Essex." The wolf padded forward, and the falcon fluttered down to stand before it. The panda moved in close as well, and Essex gave a soft screech. The three animals cautiously investigated each other. "Do they remember?" Mei-Lin asked, speaking common. She had a nice voice. It matched her appearance. "Perhaps," Tariq said. "It's difficult to pinpoint how much of their former lives they recall. Much of it might be instinct at this stage." "What about the fourth fallen beast?" Roland asked. "Uraza?" Tariq scowled. "Somebody got to Uraza and her new partner before us, much as Zarif attempted with you. The girl is named Abeka. We don't know her present location, but we won't rest until we find her. Lenori believes that she and Uraza are still alive. The challenge will be finding them." "Is Lenori how you found us?" Connor asked. Tariq nodded. "Lenori is the most gifted visionary of all the Greencloaks. Thanks to her unique foresight, we suspected the four fallen were returning." "Her powers can't be entirely unique," Roland pointed out. "Not if somebody beat you to the girl in Nilo." "If Uraza is currently lost," Mei-Lin said, "then the three of us must represent the four fallen. Aren't we supposed to learn what's going on, now that we're together?" "That information is Olven's to share," Tariq told her. "You already know that we want you to join the Greencloaks and help us preserve Erdos." "From the Devourer?" Roland asked, not hiding his skepticism. Tariq seemed momentarily startled by this question. "Who mentioned the Devourer?" "This guy I met," Roland said. "He was riding a moose." "We're still not positive who we're up against. If it isn't the Devourer himself, it's somebody very much like him. It shouldn't be long before Olven explains why we need your help. For the moment, you three should seize this chance to get better acquainted. You'll see a lot of each other in the coming days. I'll ride ahead to announce our arrival." "Get ready to be stared at," Roland warned the others as Tariq rode away. "It's all people have done since I arrived. At first I worried I had food on my face." "People tend to stare at newcomers," Mei-Lin said, "especially important ones." "I guess our animals make us important," Connor said, sounding uncertain whether he believed it. The conversation died out. Connor looked uneasy. Roland sized up the other two and their animals. Briggan was the most impressive beast. Roland knew some people back in Concorba he would love to scare with a wolf like that. The panda just sat pawing at the grass. Connor seemed shy. Mei-Lin acted uninterested. "Judging by your clothes, I take it you're rich," Roland said to her. "Wealth is relative," she replied with a cold look. "The Emperor has much more treasure than my father." Roland chuckled.
If the Zhongyi's emperor is your example of someone richer than you have to be loaded.
My father is a general, and there are also successful merchants in my bloodline.
Yep, rich, Roland said. What about you, Connor? Do you have a family or a bloodline?
Connor blushed a little, glancing at Mei Lin.
A family? We have bloodlines, I guess, but we don't use that word. We're shepherds. I got stuck as a servant for a time, but I always preferred the outdoors. And I'm an orphan, Roland said bluntly. I'm only here because Essex was my ticket out of jail. Jail? Connor exclaimed. What did you do? Roland checked to make sure they were both listening closely, then leaned in. Actually, I was innocent, not that I had any proof. I was arrested for stealing medicine from an apothecary. Were you sick? Connor asked. A friend had a bad fever, but I didn't swipe the medicine. Another friend did. I was around when it happened, so they assumed I was in on it.
Which is the lie? Mei Lin asked. That you were in jail, or that you were there for stealing medicine?
Roland shrugged. You got me. I'm actually Ulven's son. He's having me spy on you.
Mei Lin didn't challenge him further, but Roland could tell she didn't trust him. Maybe she wasn't completely stupid. It was a pretty far-fetched story. Plus, she hadn't accepted a green cloak yet. Connor peered over his shoulder at Sunset Tower.
What do you think they want us to do? Maybe you should have asked before you put on the cloak, Roland suggested.
I expect they'll want us as soldiers, Mei Lin said. Leaders, probably. The war has already begun.
I bet they want us as mascots, Roland said. They'll probably add me to the Amayan flag.
Connor laughed, blushing slightly.
Can you imagine? As if all the attention didn't make me uncomfortable enough.
This is a poor hour for humour, Mei Lin snapped, her eyes blazing. Zhong is under heavy attack. The Greencloaks smuggled me away as my father fought to defend our city. I still haven't heard whether he lived or died. Whatever they have planned for us better be good.
Roland eyed her warily. I'm not sure how helpful I'll be, Roland said. Do you two have any tips about the animals? I can hardly get Essex to do anything. I've been trying with Briggan, Connor said, crouching to pet his wolf. He can be stubborn. The more we've gotten to know each other, the better it's become. Tariq told me that eventually we can get powers from them.
Roland glanced at Mei Lin and her panda.
What's your power going to be? Cuddling?
Mei Lin's face was pure ice. For a moment her lips trembled, but after that, the anger only touched her eyes. She held out her arm and in a flash, G became a design on the back of her hand. She turned and stormed away.
See? Roland called. Like that? How did you figure that out?
Too late, Connor said quietly. I haven't known Mei Lin long, but I can tell she has a temper.
Can you do that too? Roland asked. The tattoo thing?
Not yet, Connor said. Roland stroked Essex.
At least we're not the only slow learners.
Sunset Tower was dark and still as Roland crept out of his room. He paused, listening, ready with answers if he was challenged by a watchman. He couldn't sleep. He needed a snack. But no challenge came. Peering back into his room, Roland saw Essex roosting near the window, head tucked in sleep. He eased the door closed. The open window would allow the falcon to catch up with him. The bird might not approve of his decision, which was why he hadn't tried to explain. But she would follow. They were linked now. Along the hallway, small oil lamps trimmed to a slow burn provided dim light. Moving down the corridor, Roland felt the alert guilt of a trespasser. The late hour meant he might not encounter anyone, but if he did, he knew it would look extra suspicious. The farther he deviated from the path to the kitchen, the more conspicuous he felt. How could he answer why he was heading for the castle gate fully dressed with a satchel? Why did he need a snack when his satchel was crammed with stolen food? His responses sounded so unlikely. He couldn't relax, he felt confined, he needed some fresh air. Anyone with half a brain would guess the truth. He was running away. The thought produced a stab of remorse, which he tried to shrug off. Had he ever asked to come here? Olwen had promised to protect him from Zarif, but who would protect him from Olwen? Roland knew that, in theory, he was a guest of the Greencloaks, but he was starting to feel more like a prisoner. Sure, it was mostly smiles and politeness now, but the Greencloaks' expectations were his chains. How long would the friendliness last if he quit following orders? How long would it last if they caught him tonight? He and the others had returned to the fortress earlier to, once again, the weight of the promised stairs. The Greencloaks helped Connor and Mei Ling get settled, but no additional information was forthcoming. Roland had asked more questions, but, once again, they were deflected. That evening, Roland decided he had waited for specifics long enough. The more time he stayed, the clearer it became that the Greencloaks would settle for nothing less than a lifelong commitment so they could benefit from his falcon. With Connor and Mei Ling here, the pressure on him would only increase. Each day he stayed implied that he meant to commit. If he wanted to get away, the time to act was now. Besides the big gate, Roland had seen 3 minor gates in the outer wall. All were heavily reinforced and disguised from the outside. As far as he could tell, they only opened from within. Over the past week, he had tried all of them. He knew which one he would use tonight. Roland heard the tones of distant conversation up ahead and froze. He couldn't distinguish words, but the blurry murmuring had no urgency to it. Apparently, guards were covering the main door to the courtyard, chatting to pass the time. That was no obstacle. Too many doors led from the main building out to the courtyard for them all to be guarded. There was no war here in Amaya, and people had to sleep. Stepping lightly but swiftly, Roland advanced along a narrow corridor toward another door that would lead outside. From up ahead, a voice floated his way. "Come on, Briggan! You don't want food? You don't want to go outside? Can't this wait until morning?" It was Connor. What was he doing up? Roland slipped down a side corridor, unsure where it led. He went around a corner and paused to listen. He could barely hear the wolf, but Connor was making no effort to walk quietly. They were coming his way. Moving faster, Roland took a couple other turns before the hall ended at a locked door. Breathing softly, he listened as Connor and the wolf got nearer and nearer. Surely they would turn a different direction? Why would they come down a dead end? Unless the wolf was tracking him. Roland folded his arms and leaned against the wall, hoping he could sell the idea that he was just hanging around the castle. At this hour it didn't seem very believable, but Connor didn't give the impression that he was a genius. Connor came into view with Briggan. The wolf stopped, staring at Roland. Looking rumpled and tired, Connor squinted. "Roland, what are you doing here?" "Couldn't sleep," Roland said. "I was exploring. Why are you up so late?" Connor yawned and stretched. "I was trying to sleep, but Briggan kept pawing the door." Roland looked at the wolf. It sat back, mouth open, tongue dangling. Connor wrinkled his nose. "Why hang out here? Are you up to something?" "Fine," Roland said, as if about to reluctantly admit the truth. "Essex went out flying but hasn't returned. I want to make sure she's all right." "So you came here, to a dead end?" Connor clarified. "I lost my way." "So you stood against a door?" Roland thought fast. Maybe Connor wasn't so dim after all. "I heard you coming and got embarrassed. I didn't want to seem lost. I really am concerned about Essex." Connor frowned. "If you're worried, we should tell Olwen. I'm sure he has lots of people who can help us find Essex." Roland hesitated. It had been a feeble excuse, but better than pretending he thought the kitchen was on this side of the castle. "You're right. Why don't you and Briggan go tell Olwen? I want to get started on my own just in case." Connor glanced at the satchel. "What's in the bag?" "Falcon food, as bait." Connor gave him a look. "Big bag for falcon food?" Roland sighed and gave up. "Look, don't get Olwen. Essex is fine. I'm just thinking about a change of scenery." "You're running away," Connor blurted incredulously.
Briggan cocked his head. I'm escaping, Roland clarified. You're not a prisoner, Connor said. I'm not so sure, Roland replied. You think they'd let me go? Just wander off with Essex? Connor paused. Yeah, if you insisted. How would you know? You signed up as soon as they dangled a cloak in front of you. Connor shifted. I signed up after I learned that I had summoned Briggan, he replied defensively. I never asked for my own great beast, but it happened, and now the Greencloaks need my help to protect the world. From what? Roland scoffed. They still haven't explained, not really. We hear there's a war in Zhong. They whisper about the Devourer. People I've never met look at me hopefully, and I have no idea what they expect. Even if my falcon really is the same Essex from the old stories, what are we supposed to do about a war? In the stories, Essex was huge and could talk. This Essex hardly seems to like me. I wonder why, Connor said. Briggan gave his head a quick shake. Was the wolf laughing at them? Watch it, sheep boy, Roland bristled. You might like being herded, but that isn't my style. Yeah, well, at least I don't run away the second I get scared, Connor replied with sputtering anger. You think this isn't hard for me? You think I don't have doubts too? You think I want to be stuck in some castle across the sea from my home? Go ahead and call me sheep boy any time you want. Herding sheep takes a lot more courage and know-how than sneaking away in the night. Roland found himself temporarily at a loss for words. If Connor was working with the Greencloaks in spite of his own doubts, because he thought it was the right thing to do, well, there wasn't much fault to find in that. Not that he had to admit it. I just need some space, Roland said softly, choosing to fight honesty with honesty. How am I supposed to think this through while surrounded by Greencloaks? Every meal I eat, every hand I shake, feels like pressure to join them. How am I supposed to make my own choice? The Greencloaks probably aren't bad folks, but I'm not sure their interest in me goes 1 inch beyond the falcon. That means they're using me, and that makes me cautious. I hear you, Connor said. Nobody paid much mind to me either until Briggan came along. Then I was suddenly the centre of attention. Doesn't that make you question their motives? Connor gave a little nod, and Briggan stared expectantly at him. Maybe, but I'm convinced that they're trying to defend Erdos. They need Briggan, so they need me too. Besides, Briggan seems to trust them. The wolf wagged his tail and began to pace. Roland glanced at the corridor behind Connor. Whatever I choose, I guess I blew my escape tonight. You going to turn me in? You haven't done anything, Connor replied, meeting Roland's eyes steadily. Roland lowered his head and rubbed his eyebrows with his knuckles. I guess I could wait around to hear the specifics. You could probably make a better choice that way, Connor pointed out. Meanwhile, they'll have the chance to keep reeling me in, Roland said. I won't let them force me into this. I don't care if it gets awkward. I don't even care if they lock me up. Actually, if they lock me up, I'll know I made the right call. Connor extended his arms and opened his mouth in a jaw-cracking yawn. I'm glad you might stick around for now. I'd hate to be left alone with Mei Lin. Roland smirked. Does she scare you? Connor shrugged. I've got 2 brothers. I don't know the first thing about girls. I hear they like flowers. If you say so. Connor turned and patted the side of his leg. Come on, Briggan. Let's get back to bed. Good night, Roland. Night. He watched until Connor walked out of sight. Then Roland reconsidered his options. He supposed he could still make his escape, but the mood had left him. Roland started back toward his room. His secret departure may have been compromised, but all was not lost. He could always steal away some other night. Chapter 7. Teamwork. On her way to the training room, almost every single person Mei Lin passed stared at her.
some covertly, some unashamedly gawking. Conversations stopped in mid-sentence when she came into view, and once she passed, whispers followed her. The few who didn't stare sent her careful glances or self-conscious waves and nods, which were almost more telling. Roland was right. The Greencloaks had heavy expectations of her. Maylin entered the wide and airy room and found Connor waiting with his wolf. The training area looked almost too large, much bigger than the practice space she had used with the masters back home. She guessed the vaulted ceiling was meant for Greencloaks with winged beasts. "Glad to see you," Connor said, rubbing his arm self-consciously. "I was starting to worry I'd come to the wrong place." "I got a message with my breakfast," Maylin said. "They asked me to report here with G as soon as I finished." Connor nodded. "Me too. I could hardly eat after the note. I don't know my letters very well, so I had to get help to read it." Connor reddened. "Did it sound like a test to you? Some kind of assessment?" Connor glanced at Briggan, then back at Maylin. "I guess G is on your hand." "She seems to prefer it much of the time." Connor nodded, then seemed very aware that he had run out of things to say. Crouching, he stroked Briggan. Maylin watched him avoid her gaze. He was a simple boy, base-born, uneducated, yet in one important way he was her peer. He had summoned one of the four fallen. Why him? Could it be random chance? If so, why her? Would random chance select someone as prepared for leadership as herself? Roland entered the room, the falcon on his shoulder. "Am I late?" Connor looked up, relief stamped on his face. "Glad you're here." Some quiet understanding passed between them. What had she missed? Had they discussed her in private? With Zhong under attack, she didn't want to spend any time worrying about such trivial things. But she couldn't help it, and that annoyed her. "Nobody else has shown up yet?" Roland asked. "Not yet," Connor said. Roland scanned the weapons held in racks against the walls. Swords, scimitars, knives, spears, polearms, axes, staves, and clubs. "Are we going to fight to the death?" "Nothing that exciting," Tariq said, entering the room with two other men and a woman. All three wore green cloaks and were new to Maylin. They paid rapt attention to Essex and Briggan. "We evaluate all new recruits to gauge their abilities." Roland looked at the other green cloaks. "Who are your friends?" "Observers," Tariq answered calmly. "They'll assist you as needed. Pay them little mind. I just want to put each of you through a few exercises." "Finally," Roland grumbled, "somebody to stare at us." The two men crossed to Connor and Roland. The woman approached Maylin. She was thick but not flabby and had a no-nonsense look about her. "Maylin, could you produce G?" Tariq asked. Maylin focused her attention on the simple tattoo on the back of her hand. When her interest was elsewhere, she hardly noticed the mark. But now, she could perceive warmth beneath the image, a vague presence. She mentally called to G, imagined a door opening, and then, with a flash, the tattoo vanished, and G appeared. "Well done," Tariq complimented. "Some who have newly learned to use the passive state struggle to release their animals. You did that swiftly, which is important. While passive, your spirit animal cannot aid you." Maylin gave a nod and a modest smile. Although accustomed to praise, she was not entirely immune to its effects. She noticed the boys, particularly Roland, watching her enviously. Keeping her eyes on Tariq, she pretended not to care. "Please allow your escorts to blindfold you," Tariq instructed. "We're going to test your awareness of your spirit animals without the aid of sight." Maylin held still as the woman placed a blindfold over her eyes. "Do you guys fight a lot with your eyes closed?" Roland asked. Maylin had been thinking the same thing, but she never would have said it. "This will simulate a situation where your spirit animal is out of view," Tariq explained patiently, as if the question had not been meant to rattle him. "Relax and follow instructions." A hand took Mei Lin by the elbow and led her several paces. With great care, she retained a sense of where she stood in the room. She waited for perhaps a minute.
"The animals have all changed position," Tariq announced. "I now challenge each of you to point out the location of your animal. I respectfully ask the animals to keep silent."
Mei Lin strained her senses, but could neither hear nor smell anything. She thought about the vague presence she could feel beneath the tattoo when Ji was in her dormant state, and tried to sense a similar presence around her. Nothing.
"Good, Connor. Very close,"
Tariq said. Mei Lin kept her face composed but felt disappointed. Could Connor have a stronger connection to his spirit animal than she had to hers? He couldn't even use the passive state. Maybe he had made a lucky guess.
"I'm sorry, Roland. You're way off," Tariq said. "But good job, Connor. Briggan is moving, and you're tracking him well."
Mei Lin silently ordered Ji to make herself known. From the start, Ji had obeyed her requests. But Mei Lin still felt nothing.
"Mei Lin," Tariq said, "if you're unsure, rely on your instincts."
She didn't want to point randomly, but maybe Tariq was giving her a hint. Maybe her awareness of her creature was something felt only at an instinctive level. That might explain why Connor was good at it. She doubted his problem would be too much thought. Following a whim, Mei Lin extended a finger to the right.
"Not even close, Mei Lin,"
Tariq said, with a touch of humor in his tone.
Mei Lin pointed to the left. "Better, but still far off," Tariq reported.
Mei Lin had to work to keep her expression neutral. What sort of absurd contest was this? She silently demanded for Ji to reveal herself. Once again, she sensed nothing.
"Not bad, Roland," Tariq said. "Not good, but you're doing too well for it to only be chance. Connor, you're a natural at this."
Mei Lin tried not to feel flustered. She had never attempted to sense Ji like this. Had the boys practiced? Probably.
"Care to try one more time, Mei Lin?"
Tariq asked. She pulled off her blindfold. "I feel nothing." She looked to where Ji strolled near one wall of the training area, led by an escort.
"It's not unusual," Tariq told her.
Mei Lin watched Connor's finger follow Briggan, staying on the animal even when the wolf reversed direction. Essex flew around overhead. Roland seemed to be able to identify which half of the room the bird was in, but not much else. "How can I improve?" Mei Lin asked.
"You can already call Ji to her passive state," Tariq acknowledged, "so earning the trust of your beast does not seem to be the problem. I imagine it will just take time to strengthen your connection. Part of that includes your receptiveness to her."
Mei Lin nodded. Ji always obeyed her orders, so what had gone wrong? Perhaps Tariq was right. Perhaps the panda was trying. Mei Lin frowned. Maybe she was the one unable to receive the cues. Aside from Ji's obedience, they weren't very close. What would it take? Deep affection? Mutual understanding? It was hard to respect such a docile, slow animal. But Ji was her spirit animal. There would be no other. Mei Lin knew she had to make it work.
"You may remove your blindfolds," Tariq invited.
Mei Lin glanced at the weapons on the walls. The wooden swords were obviously practice gear. Many of the arms looked real, though some of them could be blunted. With or without help from Ji, Mei Lin expected she could dominate either of the boys in just about any form of combat. Such a demonstration would be satisfying. But would it be wise? Her father had always told her to keep her abilities private, so she could surprise adversaries in times of need.
"Next, we'll try a physical exercise," Tariq announced. "All three of you will go to the far wall."
He indicated the wall he meant.
"You'll run across the room and touch this other wall as high as you can. Then run back and strike the suspended bag with all your might. Ask your animals to enhance your efforts in any way they can."
Mei Lin surveyed the canvas bag hanging from a beam by the far wall. Suspended by a chain, the bulging sack was taller than her and looked heavy. Will we do it at the same time? Maylin asked.
Yes, Tariq said. The first to reach the bag will strike it first, and so forth. We'll evaluate your speed, the height of your leap, and the force with which you hit the bag. Go ahead and take a moment with your animals.
Maylin approached G. The panda sat on her hind legs and watched her serenely. G licked one of her paws. The relaxed attitude did little to boost Maylin's confidence. Can you help me with this? Maylin asked. Can you give me extra speed, extra energy? I've never felt that from you. This might be a good time to start. The panda cocked her head, as if mildly perplexed. Look, Maylin whispered harshly. Every minute we are stuck here in training is another minute that my father and his army have to struggle without us. I know you have power. You're a great beast. So I need you to help me, because every delay helps our enemy. Do you understand? We're not playing a game here. We are at war. Did Maylin sense a degree of understanding in that unblinking silver gaze? Or was it imagined? The boys were heading to the wall, so Maylin trotted to join them. Her body was in good condition. Even though it had been a few weeks since a formal training session with the masters, she had engaged in regular routines while traveling to maintain her reflexes and endurance. The boys were taller, but she wasn't slow, and she knew how to deliver vicious blows. Briggan paced along one of the side walls, watching the three with a predator's intensity. Essex flew up to roost on the beam above the suspended bag. G sat where Maylin had left her, looking on silently. Roland smirked at her. Did you have to run much in your palace? I didn't live in a palace, Maylin replied. It was true, although she realized her home would probably look like a palace to Roland or Connor, assuming it still stood. I run fine, Connor volunteered. I haven't done it much lately. How about you, Roland? Orphans have to run well, he replied. A slow orphan ends up in jail. Weren't you just in jail? Maylin asked innocently. Are you ready? Tariq called. One Greencloak observer stood by them against the starting wall. Another was positioned by the wall where they would jump, and the third waited near the hanging sack. All three kids touched the wall behind them. Get ready, Tariq said, and go. Maylin pushed off and ran as fast as she could. In her mind, she asked G for greater speed, feeling somewhat ridiculous. It was hard to imagine extra speed coming from the sluggish panda. With swift spirit animals, Connor and Roland had more cause for faith. Maylin ran well, but as she approached the wall for the jump, Roland was a few paces ahead, and Connor was about even with her. The dash felt like nothing beyond a regular sprint. Maylin considered the jump. If the boys tried to leap high, it might slow their turn. If she focused instead on turning around quickly, she might gain ground and perhaps make it first to the hanging bag. Then again, if the jump counted for a third of her score, a weak jump might guarantee last place, even if she hit the bag hard. Ahead of her, Roland slowed a little and jumped, slapping the wall as high as he could. It was a respectable jump, but nothing extraordinary. Maylin decided to go for it. As she leaped, Maylin felt a strange surge of energy and kicked off the wall to increase the height of her jump. Connor sprang beside her, and although he was taller, she slapped the wall higher. After landing, she turned and ran hard. Connor was behind her now. Roland was a good 4 paces ahead and going strong. A piercing howl cut through the room. Briggan! Though Maylin tried to ignore the noise, goosebumps rose on her arm. Connor streaked past Maylin and past Roland as well. He reached the bag several steps ahead of Roland, jumped, and slammed into it with his shoulder. He rebounded roughly, spinning to the floor, and the bag only jounced a little. Maylin realized she needed to take care how she hit the bag. It was clearly heavy. She would treat it like she was striking a wall. Roland threw a punch at the bag as he ran by. The bag absorbed the impact as if it were nothing. At least Connor had moved it. Begging for energy from G, Maylin left the ground and kicked with both legs. The massive bag swayed with the impact, but not a lot.
She broke her fall with her hands and rose to her feet, panting. "Are you all right, Connor?" Tariq asked. He rose gingerly, rubbing his shoulder. "I'm okay." "You might have warned us it was full of rocks," Roland complained, massaging his wrist. "Sand," Tariq clarified. "Thoughts?" "Not much beyond their natural talents," the female Greencloak said. "Except toward the end of Connor's run," one of the other Greencloaks pointed out. "How did that feel?" Tariq asked. "When Briggan howled," Connor asked. "I don't know. It was like I had the wind at my back. I felt more aggressive. I wasn't planning to ram the sack, but it felt right." He grimaced. "Until I hit it." The Greencloak near the jumping wall spoke up. "Maylin may have had a little boost when she jumped." "Did you feel it, Maylin?" Tariq asked. "Maybe a little," she replied. "To be honest, I mostly felt on my own." "If the panda had helped, she would have gone slower," Roland joked. "You certainly punched like a bird," Maylin shot back. "It was hard as a feather." "Whoa," Roland said, raising both hands. "Better not pick on the panda." "No squabbling," Tariq ordered. "Your relationships with your animals are individual in nature. This isn't a contest. I mainly wanted to make each of you more aware of your spirit animal and how you might learn to help one another." Maylin fought a stab of anger. The training exercises had only emphasized the worthlessness of her relationship with G. If this was all the panda had to offer, she had made a huge mistake leaving Zhong. How could she have abandoned her father and her homeland for this? "Are we done?" Connor asked. Tariq exchanged nods with the other Greencloaks. "We've seen enough for now." "What does it look like when you hit the bag?" Roland challenged. Tariq glanced at the other Greencloaks, then at the kids. "You'd like a demonstration?" Maylin sighed softly. The last thing she wanted after her lackluster showing was to watch an expert in action. But the boys encouraged him. With a flash, a sleek otter appeared. Roland choked back a laugh. "Your spirit animal is an otter?" "Lumio is more clown than beast," Tariq explained. The otter rolled into a series of acrobatics, its long body twisting and twirling like the tail of a kite. Connor clapped. "All right," Tariq told his beast indulgently. "We all know you're the biggest show-off here. Do you mind lending me some help for a moment?" The otter jolted upright to attention, and then watched as Tariq walked to the wall where the others had started their race. Maylin gasped when he started running. Nobody could accelerate so quickly. When he reached the wall, he kicked against it 3 times, gaining altitude with each step, before slapping a spot more than twice as high as anyone else had reached. As he fell, Tariq pushed off from the wall, did a backflip, and landed running. When he reached the hanging bag, his punch made it leap and quake. Then he turned away from the swinging bag. "Amazing!" Connor said. Roland clapped as well and gave a whistle. Maylin decided she had better offer some applause, or she would look like a poor sport. The display really had been quite impressive. She would never have guessed that the tall warrior could move with such speed and agility. Tariq extended a hand to his otter. "Lumio deserves the accolades. Without him, I could not have done any of that. We're a team, just as you are with your animals. Explore that connection, and you will be rewarded." "Impressive," Maylin conceded. "But I feel like we're getting distracted. Zhong is under attack. People are dying. Who knows how many cities have fallen by now? I've come a long way in good faith, but I'm starting to wonder how my presence in Amaya is helping the war in Zhong. When will we learn what you Greencloaks want from us? I didn't cross Erdos to run races and kick sacks of sand." "Soon," Tariq promised. "Olvan is finalizing his plans. You 3 have no idea how vital you are. We have to use you correctly, and you must try your best to be ready." Tariq and the other Greencloaks departed. Maylin avoided further conversation with Connor and Roland by heading directly to G, who had rolled over onto her back, legs splayed out ridiculously. "Let's go back to our room," she told the panda. G looked up expectantly. Maylin raised her hand. "You want a lift? Guess what? As a reward for all your help, You get to walk today." Meilin started toward her room, not caring whether the panda followed or not. Chapter 8. The Island. By the glow of a large yellow moon, Abeka crept along the rooftop behind Uraza, breathing softly. From her high vantage, she could see the lagoon where their ship had docked. The warm, humid air carried the rich smell of jungle foliage, mingled with the salty tang of the sea. According to Shane, they were on an island in the Gulf of Amaya, on the far side of the ocean from Nilo. She had secretly explored part of it on 2 previous outings, confirming that it was at least a peninsula. Since she had been asleep when the ship made port, tonight she would see for herself that she was truly on an island. Not that she doubted Shane, it just gave her something to do. She had never been on an island before. Uraza leaped down from the roof to the top of a wall. It was not a serious drop, but the landing was barely 3 handspans wide. As Abeka paused, Uraza looked back at her, eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Abeka felt a steadying surge of ability. The tension departed from her muscles, leaving her relaxed and limber. Her balance steadied, and she concentrated on the night sounds of the island. Creatures scurrying, the call of a bird, and a hushed conversation below, perhaps on a balcony, perhaps on the ground. Her vision sharpened in the low light, and she breathed the layered scents in the air. Abeka landed lightly on the wall, then hurried to where it joined the outer wall of the complex. After climbing a little, she dangled from the wall and dropped to the sandy ground. Nobody had seen her escape, not that it mattered. If she got caught, the only penalty would be the sting of failure. She was hungry for practice. Her training with Shane was useful but artificial. These nighttime excursions with Uraza felt much more authentic. Abeka followed Uraza into a ferny shadow world of tall trees with enormous leaves. She was not used to such lush vegetation, to vines and creepers, or to so many trees crowded together, but supposed the wetness in the air explained why plants thrived here. Since her arrival, it had already rained twice, short, hard downfalls that came on with little warning and ended just as swiftly. Abeka wished that she could send some of the abundant water to her village. The stronghold where they were staying disappeared behind them. Situated just inland from the sheltered inlet where the whale-towed ships were anchored, the walled outpost contained the only buildings she had found on the island. "Uraza, this way," Abeka said, pointing. The leopard had been veering toward the highlands they had already explored. "I want to see the far side of the island." The big cat moved off in the desired direction. The rustling of shrubs and the cries of birds did little to disturb Abeka. She would never have ventured into this jungle alone at night, but with Uraza at her side, she felt invincible. They prowled unhurriedly, whispering through the foliage like ghosts. Falling into an almost trance-like state, Abeka mimicked Uraza, pausing when she paused, advancing when she advanced. Through their bond, Abeka studied the leopard's techniques while borrowing her sharper senses and innate stealth. After some time, they emerged from the trees to climb a long slope that grew steeper as they followed it. The bushes were smaller here, affording Abeka a long view of the dark forest behind her, the lights of the little outpost reduced to orange sparks near the lagoon. From the bare ridgetop, Abeka got her first view of the farthest side of the island. The opposite slope descended sharply to the sea. By the moonlight, she could discern the coastline, partly shielded from the open water by long sandbars. There was no other land in sight. Her eyes were drawn to a pale beach in a certain cove, due to the presence of 2 bonfires. To blaze so brightly at this distance, the fires had to be an impressive size. Figures moved on the beach, dark specks occasionally illuminated by the firelight. "Look down there," Abeka said. "Who could that be?" Crouching low, Uraza watched warily beside her. Abeka squinted, straining her sight. "Hard to tell from up here. They're a long way from the outpost. Could it be pirates? Shane said all ships have to watch out for pirates lately."
Uraza remained still beside her. Abeka wondered if Shane's people knew they were sharing the island. Could the figures on the beach pose a threat? It seemed unlikely. There were dozens of people at the sturdy outpost, many of them armed soldiers and most with spirit animals. 3 big ships waited in the lagoon. Shane had mentioned others coming soon, distinguished visitors. Could it be them on the beach? Wouldn't visitors come directly to the outpost? "I don't like this," Abeka murmured. "I don't want to risk anybody sneaking up on Shane and his people. Think we could get close without being spotted?" In reply, Uraza flicked her tail and started down the slope toward the cove. Abeka followed. Soon they passed beneath trees again. Abeka took extra care to move silently. This was no longer a game. The people on the beach could be dangerous. A balmy breeze ruffled the surrounding leaves, bringing the faint smell of smoke. Abeka welcomed the breeze. It would further disguise any sounds they made. After a considerable hike, the smoke grew stronger, and Abeka could hear distant conversations. Then, from up ahead, a shriek pierced the night. A second shriek came, less strident, followed by a third. Abeka held her breath, kneeling down beside Uraza. The cries stopped. The shrieks had not sounded human, nor did they match any animal she could think of, but they had sounded desperate. Uraza started forward again. They advanced more cautiously than ever, a little at a time, finally coming within sight of the beach. Together, Abeka and Uraza crept as close as they dared, gazing out from the last of the dense foliage beneath the shadows of the trees. The twin bonfires burned wide and tall, like small huts accidentally set ablaze. By the rippling light, Abeka saw 6 large cages and perhaps 10 men. 4 of the cages contained monstrous beasts. One was feathery, some gargantuan bird of prey. Another had quills like a porcupine, but was nearly the size of a buffalo. A third held a huge coiled snake, probably some kind of constrictor, and the fourth housed what appeared to be a muscular rat big enough to bring down an antelope. An ordinary dog paced inside one of the other cages, looking small and scared compared to the neighboring monstrosities. The 6th cage stood empty. A man in a hooded cloak approached the empty cage with a rat in his hand. The rodent was big, but nothing like the unnatural rat nearby. "Let's double the amount on this one and check for differences," he said. "Large or small, a dose is a dose," a bald man protested. "We have plenty," the hooded man countered. "We lost the parrot, so we have an extra cage. Let's find out firsthand." Abeka had to strain, but she felt sure that she heard the words correctly. The hooded man produced a water skin and upended it over the mouth of the rat in his other hand. The rat squirmed, tail whipping from side to side. "That's enough," one of the other men growled. "Cage it," another man demanded. "Not yet," the hooded man said, capping the water skin. "If I'm too hasty, it will run out between the bars." He held out the rat for the other men to see. It wriggled in his grasp, seeming to swell. It began squirming harder, screeching in pain. The hooded man turned and stuffed the rat between the bars of the empty cage. The rodent writhed on the cage floor, new flesh bursting out beneath its fur. It let out a tortured shriek that Abeka recognized. It squealed one more time, then lunged against the bars, its enlarged body bloated with muscle. The rat tested the bars several times, rocking the cage and kicking up sand, before settling down. Abeka could hardly trust her eyes. What would Shane think when she told him about this? Would he believe her? She glanced over at Uraza. "You're my only witness," she whispered. "You see this, don't you? It isn't natural. What did they give it?" Uraza only looked her way for an instant, then returned her attention to the beach. "What did I tell you?" the bald man said. "A dose is a dose. The amount don't matter." "This one is a little larger," the hooded man said, "and if you ask me, the transformation took less time." "Waste of effort,"
Let's finish this." "This last one should be simplest," the hooded man said. "Admiral is well trained. He may even remain so after the bile." "I'll believe it when I see it," the bald man said. The hooded man held up his water skin. "Get ready to eat your words." He walked over to the cage with the dog inside. "Sit, Admiral." The dog sat. "Speak." The dog barked and wagged its tail. The hooded man uncapped the water skin and held it between the bars. "Come." The dog came forward, and the man poured fluid into its mouth. Abeka could see some splashing free, then he backed away. Several other men stepped closer to the cage, warily clutching long spears. One held a bow with an arrow set to the string. Abeka didn't want to watch, but couldn't tear her eyes away from the sight of the dog convulsing and enlarging. It didn't cry out like the rat, but it whined softly. As the dog changed, its muscles pulled taut, bulging grotesquely. Its eyes grew fierce and wide, and foam began frothing from the corners of its mouth. The dog let out a low growl before launching itself against the side of the cage, very nearly toppling it over onto its side. "Sit, Admiral," the hooded man called from a distance. The monstrous dog shifted into a sitting position. "Speak." The beefy dog let out a powerful bark that resonated through the jungle, sending birds flying from the trees. "Good boy, Admiral," the hooded man called. "Good boy." "All right, I'm impressed," the bald man admitted, "but I wouldn't let it out without a leash." Some of the other men chuckled. Most still held their weapons cautiously. A swirling breeze stirred the air. Suddenly, the dog whipped its head toward the jungle, staring directly at Abeka. It let out a rumbling growl. Some of the men glanced in the direction the dog was staring. Abeka resisted the urge to immediately retreat. If she moved while their eyes were on her, she would give herself away for sure. She had to rely on the leaves and the shadows. The dog's growl built into a series of vicious barks. "What is it, Admiral?" the hooded man called, following the animal's gaze. The huge dog barked more fiercely. "No, no, no," Abeka whispered. The dog began to savagely ram the sides of the cage. The men were shouting to each other, but Abeka couldn't make out their words under the noise. Barking and thrashing, the dog went into a frenzy. The cage shuddered violently. The dog began bashing the roof, and the wood began to crack and splinter. Abeka felt sharp teeth on her arm. Uraza was gently biting her. Once Abeka noticed her, the leopard slunk back deeper into the trees. Abeka joined her retreat. The wild clamour continued behind her, and then there was a violent crack. Glancing over her shoulder, Abeka saw the enormous hound crash through the roof of the cage, the bars falling away in all directions. Ignoring the men, some of whom made half-hearted jabs with their spears, the monstrous dog raced straight toward Abeka, spewing sand with each massive stride. Uraza broke into a run, with Abeka sprinting beside her. All pretense at stealth abandoned, Abeka tore through the jungle, wishing she had brought more weaponry than a knife. Then again, what good would any weapon do against the savage dog? The animals stampeded behind them. Ferocious barks and growls impelled Abeka forward. There was no time to strategize. She ran with everything she had, driven by pure terror. The same terrain that had permitted her to creep alongside Uraza now tripped her up. Branches lashed her body, roots grabbed her ankles, and the uneven ground was treacherous. She stumbled to her knees several times and fell flat once, but always rose as quickly as she could, clawing at the vegetation, half running, half swimming through the leaves. The gigantic dog was gaining rapidly. Any moment those teeth would seize her. She had lost sight of Uraza. The dog was nearly upon her. Determined not to be an easy victim, Abeka drew her knife and whirled. Her senses abruptly sharpened. She saw the overgrown canine coming and shrank into a comfortable crouch. As it lunged, she sprang sideways, swinging her knife. The tip of the blade scratched the brute's flank as the beast blurred past her. Abeka put a tree between herself and the dog. It struck the tree with enough force to shake the jungle, but the trunk held. Abeka raced away, but the frothing dog pursued her relentlessly. She tripped, rolled onto her back, and held up her knife in desperation. The dog surged forward, mouth gaping, teeth huge in the darkness. With a screaming roar unlike any cry Abeka had ever heard, Uraza hurtled out of the night, her jaws closing on the side of the dog's neck. The impact broke the dog's rushing attack. Leopard and dog tumbled together in the darkness, narrowly missing Abeka, snarling and spitting, teeth flashing, claws slashing. Abeka's first instinct was to run. Her second thought was to help Uraza. But then she got the distinct impression that she should climb. The notion came so strongly that she leaped to the nearest tree, embracing the trunk with arms and knees. There were no branches to grip, but she pulled with her arms and clamped with her knees, somehow heaving herself higher and higher. At last, she found short limbs where she could rest. Behind her, she saw Uraza had taken to a tree as well, a red wound marring her magnificent pelt. Below, the frustrated dog barked and bayed, and finally howled. Abeka's tree shook as the dog rammed it with manic tenacity. She held tight. She had lost her knife. Her only hope was to outlast her attacker. Something caught the dog's attention and it ran over to another tree. Dimly, in the leaf-filtered moonlight, Abeka saw a figure high in the branches. It held a bow and was launching arrow after arrow down at the dog. The huge dog leaped and barked and growled. It clawed futilely at the trunk. No matter how many arrows found their mark, it didn't seek cover. Finally, with a slow inevitability, the arrows did their job. The creature sank back, took 2 wobbly steps, then collapsed on the forest floor with a plaintive whine. The figure climbed down from the tree. He paused beside the rapidly shrinking dog, then came to the base of Abeka's tree. "Come down, Abeka," a hushed voice called. She knew the voice. "It's dead. Come down, we need to go." Hugging the trunk, Abeka shinnied down the tree and dropped to the ground. "Shane, how did you find me?" "Did you think I'd let you roam the jungle alone at night?" he replied. "You followed me?" "Not so loud," Shane warned, looking away through the trees. "I'd rather the men on the beach not find us." "The men," Abeka said, lowering her voice. "They made the dog into a monster. They fed it something." "I know about them," Shane said. "I didn't know they were here tonight until it was too late. Otherwise I would have steered you away." "How far back were you?" "Too far. I try not to make my presence known, although I'm sure I never fooled your leopard." "What were those men doing?" "They're trying to find a replacement for the nectar. They try out their concoctions in secret." "The nectar doesn't create monsters." "These men are testing different substances," Shane said. "I don't know all their goals. It would not end well if they caught us. We should go." Uraza prowled into view, her side bleeding. Crouching beside her leopard, Abeka flung her arms around her neck. "Thank you," Abeka murmured. "You saved my life." Chapter 9. Vision. In a lofty antechamber, daylight streamed through a stained glass window, splashing colourful patterns across the floor. Briggan explored the area, sniffing the corners and the furniture. When the wolf passed through the tinted light, dappled hues glossed his grey-white coat. Connor had lost track of how long they had waited. It frustrated him that even though he was no longer a servant to Devin, he was still stuck inside a castle all the time. He could tell that Briggan didn't love being cooped up either. The door opened, and Roland emerged with Essex on his shoulder. Connor and Briggan looked up expectantly. Apparently, Lenore and Roland were finally done. "Your turn," Roland said. "How was it?" Connor asked. Roland shrugged. "She wanted to know about my dreams. If it was a test, I don't think I passed. Have fun." Connor entered the room where Lenore waited in a large, padded chair that dwarfed her petite frame. Her green cloak rested on a nearby table. Feathers were braided into her long hair, and several beaded necklaces and bracelets hung from her neck and wrists.
Her bare feet rested on a low ottoman, her soles calloused and brown. Beside her chair, a peculiar bird roosted on a tall portable perch. The bird had a slender neck, a down-curved bill, and vibrant plumage of every shade. Lenore indicated a nearby chair to Connor. He sat down, Briggan on the floor near him. She looked at him with eyes as unfathomable as the ocean. He wondered if she could read his mind. "How are you, Connor?" The question was posed mildly and seemed sincere. "Me? Honestly? I keep wondering whether Briggan came to the right person." Lenore smiled. "No beast would bond with the wrong person, least of all a great beast. Where does this worry come from?" Connor regretted having expressed the concern. Her posture was relaxed, but there was no escaping those watchful eyes. "All of this is just so far beyond anything I ever expected." "I think I understand." Her voice was gentle and melodious. "Don't pressure yourself to evolve overnight. You'll grow into this role. Tell me about your dreams since Briggan arrived." Connor considered the question. "Once, in real life, I had to fight off a pack of wolves from the sheep I protected. I've had to relive that night in my dreams a lot lately." He glanced over at Briggan, who had his mouth open with his tongue hanging out. It was the closest a wolf could get to smiling. "Have any other animals visited your dreams?" Lenore asked. "I don't know," Connor said. "I saw a ram not long ago, the kind with big curly horns." Lenore leaned forward. "Where was it? What was it doing?" The circumstances returned to him vividly. It had been the rare sort of dream that felt exactly like real life, even in memory. He had been climbing a high, rugged mountain, the rough stone as cold as ice beneath his palms. Scaling a sheer face, he had reached a point where he could progress no farther, nor could he descend the way he had come. As the wind kicked up, he had clung to the mountainside miserably, knowing he could continue or retreat, and either way he would fall. His muscles burning, the air too thin to satisfy his lungs, he had held on as tight as he could, knowing that eventually his strength would fail and he would plummet to the base of the cliff. Why had he climbed so high? Since holding still meant certain death, he'd decided that he had to keep going, no matter how scant the handholds. Stretching, he hooked his fingertips over a tiny wrinkle in the rock overhead. As he searched for his next handhold, the sun crested the mountaintop, blinding him. Squinting, grimacing, arms burning, toes slipping, he fumbled for anything to grab with his right hand. Then, a shadow had fallen across him, and he peered up at the huge silhouette of a ram, staring down at him from higher still up the cliff. The sight of the beast had made him forget his peril. He had stared for a long moment before his hands failed him. He gave an agonized scream, and then he fell, his stomach lurching to his throat as he hurtled toward the ground. Just as he was about to hit, he woke up, slick with sweat. "I was in the mountains," Connor said. "I saw it right before I woke up. The sun was in my eyes. The ram was big, but it was hard to see details." "Have you ever worked with bighorn sheep?" Lenore asked. "No, but I've seen pictures of Arax. My parents have one. The ram in my dreams was like him." "Was it like him, or was it him?" Connor was very conscious of her heightened interest. Didn't she ever blink? He knew the answer, but felt awkward. He worried it would come across like he was trying to sound important. He glanced away, then back. "It was just a dream, but yeah, I think it was Arax." "Have you dreamed about any of the other great beasts? Rumfus, Talun? Do you know all of them?" Connor chuckled uncomfortably. "I know there are 15, the 4 fallen, plus the other 11. I'm no expert. I can name some of them. Kabaro the lion, Mulop the octopus, Arax, of course. Shepherds pay extra attention to him. With enough time, I could maybe remember them all." "The great beasts have protected Erdos since time out of mind. We would all do better to be more familiar with them. Besides the 4 obvious ones and those you named, we have Telun the elk, Ninani the swan, Hallowir the eagle, Dinesh the elephant, Rumphus the boar, Suka the polar bear, Kovo the ape, and Garathon the serpent. Connor noticed Briggan's ears prick up. I haven't dreamed about the others, just that ram. Do you mind me asking why you're so interested? I doubt it was an ordinary dream. Briggan stood up, watching her intently. The wolf seems to agree, Lenore said. Briggan barked, making Connor jump. Dreams can range from the meaningless to the prophetic, Lenore said. It usually takes experience to discern one from the other. The dreams Roland and Meilin shared with me were of little consequence. I hoped for more from Meilin, but she needs to grow closer to G first. I suspected your dreams might be weightier, and you haven't disappointed me. Connor shifted in his chair. Why'd you suspect me? Briggan was among the more visionary of the great beasts. He is known by the titles Pack Leader, Moonrunner, and, significantly, Pathfinder. Connor reached out and rubbed the coarse mane on the back of Briggan's neck. Are you really all of those things? Briggan turned his head, his tongue lolling out in another wolfish grin. I too have seen Arax the ram lately, Lenore said. That is why we gathered at the Sunset Tower in Amaya, the nearest Greencloak tower to his current domain. You know where to find him? Connor asked. I don't know his exact location, Lenore said, but I hope we may be able to find him together. Aside from the recent return of Briggan and the Fallen, none have encountered the great beasts for many years. Arax is among the most solitary. He prefers the mountaintops, exercising his influence over the winds and terrain in the highest places of the world. We can't trust luck or woodcraft to find him. The wilds of Western Amaya are untamed. Unguided, we could search for years and never get close. Lenore paused for a moment, then spoke in a softer voice. Would you mind trying for a waking vision? Me? Connor asked. He was no prophet. What do you mean? Briggan may be able to use your connection to share information glimpsed from afar. Connor rubbed his hands over his eyes. I wouldn't know how to begin. Lenore crossed to Connor and knelt before him. She took both of his hands in hers. He tried not to go completely rigid. Unbeknownst to some Greencloaks, Lenore explained, spirit animals do not only exist to let us swing a sword harder. There can be aspects to the connection more valuable than running fast or jumping high. If you relax, I believe I can show you. I'll try if you want, Connor said. He certainly couldn't relax with her holding his hands. Perhaps sensing this, Lenore backed away. Don't try to force it, she instructed. Relax and gaze upon Miriam, my rainbow ibis. Watch her as you would a campfire on a lonely night. The bird on the perch spread her multicolored wings. She bobbed gently, causing cascades of color to ripple through her vivid feathers. Trying to follow Lenore's instructions, Connor thought about how he watched campfires. He tried not to stare hard at a fixed point. Without searching for anything specific, he let the rainbow ibis serve as his center of attention. Lenore was speaking, but Connor got lost in the cadence of her words. Her voice was rhythmic, a melodic pulse that steadied and calmed him. Dimly, he noticed Briggan turning in a circle, first one way, then the other. He began to feel very drowsy. He blinked his eyes, but it didn't seem to help. In fact, with every blink, the room became more of a blur. Connor stared down a misty tunnel. Where had that come from? He soared down the hazy passage without any sensation of movement. At its end, he saw a grizzly bear and a raccoon hurrying across a wide brown prairie. With an effort of will, he sped up until he glided alongside them. There was no wind in his face, no physical evidence of his speed, but the shaggy grizzly bear ran hard, as did the raccoon. Both kept their eyes fixed on the horizon. Looking ahead, Connor saw a spectacular mountain range. Atop a distant ridge, the great ram was outlined in sunlight. As soon as his eyes locked on the ram, Connor found himself pulled from behind. Against his will, he withdrew back into the misty tunnel until the animals became specks in the distance. The tunnel collapsed and dissolved. Connor realized that Lenore, Briggan, and the rainbow ibis were all staring at him. He felt clammy. His mouth tasted weird and oddly fuzzy, like after a long sleep. "What did you see?" Lenore inquired serenely.
"Huh?"
He felt unsteady.
I saw a raccoon and a big shaggy bear. They were running towards some mountains. I could see Arax beyond them, up high on the rocks. They were heading straight at him.
"A bear and a raccoon," Lenore repeated. "Anything else?"
"I didn't notice much else. I was mostly focused on the bear and the raccoon. I had to go through a long tunnel."
Lenore gave a triumphant smile. She took his hand, squeezing it gently. "You did it, Connor. I think you found our path." In less than an hour, Connor was escorted past a dozen armed guards and through multiple sets of double doors to a high room with the curtains drawn. He found Olvan, Lenore, Tariq, Rolan, and Maylin waiting, along with all of their spirit animals. Tariq's otter darted around the room in bursts of motion, clambering across furniture and bookcases. Tariq's pairing with Lumio seemed odd, since the tall green cloak was so serious. Olvan's moose stood near the fireplace, its massive form out of place indoors. The dignified room had a feel similar to the Earl of Trunswick's study, but it was even bigger. Olvan stood up, rubbed his big hands together, and swept the room with his keen, knowing gaze. In spite of the white in his hair and beard, he had thick, powerful limbs and a broad chest. Age had not yet robbed him of strength or vigor. Connor could easily imagine him astride his moose, leading an army into battle. The commander of the Greencloaks noisily cleared his throat.
"I know we have kept you in suspense regarding the roles we hope you will play. You can blame me for the delay. I prefer to know the whole story before I share it. Joining the Greencloaks is merely the first step toward the vital purpose we hope you'll serve. Given recent developments," he nodded toward Connor, "the time to act is upon us."
Olvan strolled over to the mantel. When he turned to face the others, his expression was grave.
"Centuries and centuries ago, in the last worldwide war, the 4 nations of Erdas battled the Devourer and his army of conquerors. 2 great beasts aided the Devourer, Kovo the ape and Garathon the serpent. 4 of the great beasts sided with us. 3 of them are here today."
Olvan paused to let that sink in. Feeling unworthy, Connor considered Briggan. The wolf sat listening attentively.
"Before the original Essex, Briggan, G, and Uraza joined the fight, we were losing the war. None of the continents went unscathed. Most of Nilo and Zhong had fallen. The Zhongese and Niloans who escaped fled to Yura and Amaya, only to find those nations besieged as well. Cities were razed. Food was in short supply. It was only a matter of time before the Devourer declared victory. The Greencloaks were a fledgling organization then, but when 4 of the great beasts showed their support, the Marked flocked to join us. The Greencloaks did what nobody else had done. They mounted a major offensive, taking the fight to the Devourer. The 4 great beasts gave their lives in the fight, which is why they are known as the 4 Fallen. But the Devourer fell as well, and Kovo and Garathon were captured. The cost was great, but the 4 nations emerged victorious and began to rebuild."
"What about the rest of the beasts?" Rolan asked. "The other 9?
Olvan shrugged. Seeing the damage that 2 of their own had caused, a few of the great beasts offered their aid at the very end. Telun the elk, the most powerful of them all, imprisoned Kovo and Garethon for their crimes, and Ninani the swan gifted the Greencloaks with the secret to creating nectar. The rest, well, the great beasts are a strange group. They are seldom unanimous on any issue, and their purposes are almost inscrutable. They tend to remain aloof, only getting involved during times of the direst peril.
The Devourer didn't count as serious trouble?
Roland scoffed. Ulven sighed.
One can only speculate. Perhaps some of the great beasts felt it best to protect their own territory, or their talismans.
Connor looked at Lenori, a question in his eyes. Each of the great beasts protects a unique talisman, Lenori inserted, a totem that houses great power. Except for Kovo, Garethon, and the fallen beasts, Maelin said. Their talismans vanished after the war. Some suspect that Telun asked Hallowir the Eagle to hide them.
Very good, Ulven said. You've studied your history. The events surrounding the great beasts are often dismissed as legend. I am glad that some in Zhong have considered those deeds worth remembering outside of children's tales.
Maelin reddened slightly. I heard about that from my nanny, not my instructors.
Ulven frowned. The great beasts have been out of sight for a long time. We honor the fallen on our flags. We paint pictures. We build statues. We tell stories. But for most people, the great beasts belong to a time long past. Some doubt whether they ever even existed.
I was one of those, Roland said, until Essex came along.
Ulven nodded.
You're not to be blamed. It's a prevalent opinion, shared in varying measures by the Prime Minister of Amaya, the Queen of Yora, the Emperor of Zhong,